Mainly the first 5 years of using Patreon has been very unsuccessful, whereas this year has been much better, and I'm going to explain why and hopefully give you some ideas if you're an artist, the types of things that you could do to adjust to the changing world. But before I do that, did I introduce myself? I'm Mikey Bizan. I'm a self-taught animator and musician. So originally I was using Patreon as more of a virtual tip jar where people can get some behind the scenes access to sketches, work in progress, songs that are being worked on in progress. And this can work for some people, but it tends to work much better if you have a huge audience. Whereas if you're actually giving people more of a product, something that they can actually use, you don't have to have as big an audience because there's a lot more incentive for people to support you.
Here's 3 key things that I learned from relaunching Patreon this year. I still have a lot to learn, but maybe this can be useful to other artists who are thinking about starting their own Patreon. So number 1 is provide valuable content. There's an argument to be made that entertainment is valuable content, and I wouldn't dispute that we need entertainment and art, but I think something that is often overlooked is the fact that artists have to have tools to create things. So whatever it is that you're making, think about what you use to make what you make. In other words, think about tools or assets that you can provide to people to create their own work. I never had more than 10 patrons in any given month for the first 4 years I was on Patreon. And partly that was because I didn't put much effort into promoting it. In fact, for most of 2019, my one and only supporter was my girlfriend, because she got tired of seeing a $0 sign on the amount that I was getting each month. I was mainly using the platform as a virtual tip jar, but once we started offering animation clips as downloadable packs, patronage grew from just a couple patrons a month to 150 patrons within 8 months in 2020. Now, these animated VJ loops are primarily used for live performances. Creating content for live performance when live events are in hibernation is not an effective business strategy. This would be like Cookie Monster deciding to do tutorials about table manners. Giving out live performance animations when there's a pandemic going on doesn't seem very feasible. Yet the Patreon page is growing during the pandemic. In fact, it's grown more this year than all 5 years combined by far, which brings us to the second point: adjust your offering. So you have to pay attention to what's going on around you. If the world or market interest around your product or service changes, you have to adapt. You can adapt by changing what you create and learning a whole new skill, which is a huge time investment. On the other hand, you can adapt by changing the message or method of delivery of what you're creating without fundamentally changing what you create. An example of this would be teaching online as opposed to teaching in a classroom. It's the same service essentially, but the method of delivery is different. So while these animated clips are optimized for live performances, they can also be edited into music videos and social media posts and streaming by anyone with a video editor. So creating videos doesn't require leaving the house. I changed the messaging to focus on the benefits of using animated clips for streaming and video production. This didn't require any change at all to what I was making. We're still just drawing animated loops one frame at a time. The only thing that changed was the messaging. Now the focus is on how animation can be useful to performers and musicians in the 2020 landscape by using the internet as the virtual stage. And lastly, number 3 is to offer something you already make. This is all about pragmatic use of your time so that you don't have to add on a whole bunch of additional tasks if you decide to create a Patreon page. It should be something that naturally fits into your workflow. So you want to offer something that will scale without taking up more time as your Patreon page grows. For instance, if you're giving out postcards of art, it's going to get harder and harder to mail out as your Patreon grows, because you have to mail it out to each individual Patreon supporter. But offering a downloadable asset will be just as easy to give to 1,000 people as it would be to give to one person. So if you make art on Photoshop with your own custom brushes, consider offering downloadable brush packs. Figure out what it is you're already making and how you could repackage that into something downloadable. This could be templates, music samples, reference files. Like if you're making music and you've created a whole bunch of music samples, you might as well just give them out to people who enjoy your music. Or if people are asking you how you drew a certain picture and you have like a particular color palette, even, you could offer color palette packs. Pay attention to what people are asking and what they're interested in. Most artists have tons of assets sitting on their hard drives that could benefit people. Just think about how you could turn all these tools that you use to create your work and give it to people who are interested, because then that'll allow them not only just to be entertained by your work, but also to benefit from the value of being able to create their own work and grow as artists themselves. Yes, people will support you on Patreon if they like you, but they'll have far more incentive to support you if you're giving them value in return. Now I'll take you into my Patreon analytics and show you what changed when I relaunched the page in 2020. So here's the type of content I was posting on Patreon in 2015. You can see storyboards for music videos people could download, and some comics, sometimes really just videos that were already posted on YouTube. A lot of people will offer the videos a week before it's officially released, or offer videos without ads. And this works okay if you have a big following, but once I started posting things that were a little bit more useful as opposed to just entertaining, it took off more. And this is kind of the first time I experimented with offering an animation loop, and someone could download it here. It's still like a very slow growth, some artwork downloads. It wasn't until we get up to, let's see here, this one, December 29th, 9 VJ loop pack for all, which is a bundle of 9 loops. This is when it starts to grow, and then every month I've been posting a new pack in a different animation style, different theme, and I'll show you here what the growth looks like. So see, 2015 and onwards, there's a whole lot of zeros, not very many new monthly pledges, and this is what the graph looks like. So from 2015 to 2019, there's almost no growth at all. It wasn't until I started offering the VJ packs that the spike just goes up. And this also coincided with the fact that I had been growing an email list to promote my shop where people could purchase these packs individually. But by growing an email list, you're also not just reliant on social media or YouTube to advertise your things. In November, there were 2 pledges. To December, there are 46 pledges. And then the growth here is that by the end of January, there's $182 pledged. And there was just the pandemic stuff. It was kind of growing slowly. But I changed the messaging more towards music videos as opposed to live events, because all the live events are closed. So from April, it was 382, and then by focusing the messaging on video editing on your computer from home, it jumped up to 745. So this basically doubled in growth, and then it's been growing each month. Some months there's a lot less growth, and then there'll just be like a jump. And then September was the last big jump, and the past 2 months it's been growing slower. And my first instinct is probably because of the election stuff. There's a lot of anxiety just surrounding the uncertainty of what's going on. And Well, the nice thing about Patreon is you don't just have to guess. You can actually go over to your patrons tab and go to exit surveys, and instead of just guessing why people are deleting their pledges, you can get an inside look because they will tell you. You can see here it's all a lot of financial situation changes, losing their job, no gigs due to the pandemic. So this tells you if you're either you're doing something wrong or if it's like an external thing going on.
In conclusion, give something valuable that can be downloaded, something that is just as easy to provide to one person as it is to 1,000 people. That way, as your Patreon grows, you're not having to do more and more work. The other thing would be to adjust your offer to fit the context of the world that we're living in. And finally, whatever it is that you're offering on your Patreon page, make it something that you're already creating, something that you can repurpose or repackage. That way you're not having to do a ton of extra work on top of what you're already doing. It's more about how can I format this thing into a downloadable asset that other people can use. Think about how you can create tools for other people to use and benefit from. I hope you found this useful. If you liked it, please leave a like and comment in the description below. And don't forget to check out the other content on the channel.